The air within Alara's expansive glass and steel mansion, a bold architectural statement perched dramatically on a forested hill overlooking the city, always felt meticulously controlled, almost suffocatingly so. Alara, my godmother, at 48, was the undisputed sovereign and architect of this austere domain. A titan in corporate law, she was renowned for her razor-sharp intellect, her unflappable, aggressive demeanor, and her profound intolerance for any hint of weakness, professional or personal. My relationship with her as 26-year-old Ethan was one of respectful admiration tinged with a distinct chill. She was the formidable embodiment of success, I, the earnest young relative who quietly benefited from her immense influence. I'd been occupying the luxurious detached guest suite for 2 months, serving as her unofficial personal assistant while I recalibrated my life after a significant career setback. My presence was tolerated, even functionally appreciated. However, the cardinal rule of the house was absolute: do not disrupt the carefully constructed order of her control. This meant upholding the illusion that her life was flawless, seamless, and entirely self-sufficient. My daily tasks were purely logistical, running errands, managing the estate's complex technological systems, and, above all, respecting the absolute sanctity of her private space, particularly her sprawling, soundproofed office and library wing, her sanctuary and fortress. Alara was the epitome of self-reliance, a machine of competence. The very notion of her requiring mundane physical assistance was fundamentally incompatible with her meticulously crafted persona. Yet, over the past 2 weeks, a chilling dissonance had crept into the house's silent rhythm. I'd begun to notice subtle, unnerving cracks in her flawless facade. Lights in her office would burn stubbornly until 4 in the morning. Phone calls went conspicuously unanswered even when the device lay beside her, and a disconcerting, almost metallic pallor had settled beneath her expensive, expertly applied makeup. Something significant was undeniably amiss. A major career crisis, the threat of exposure, or perhaps a debilitating silent illness. But her iron will kept the secret perfectly concealed beneath a veneer of elegant exhaustion. It was just past 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. The house was submerged in the deep, heavy silence of a security system on guard. I was reviewing technical files related to her network integrity when I heard it. A single, sharp, explosive sound emanating from the forbidden office wing. Not the crash of shattering glass, but the heavy, non-resilient thud of a large, dense adult body falling onto thick carpet, immediately followed by the distinctive, metallic clatter of something organizational, perhaps a binder, cascading violently across the floor. This was succeeded by a profound, strained, absolute silence, far more terrifying than the noise itself, an unnatural absence of sound that spoke of an immediate, acute, and complete physical crisis. My mind raced through the standard protocols, call the security firm, her trusted, ruthless personal assistant. No, she would be furious, perhaps even ruin me for exposing her weakness to her employees or the outside world. The only acceptable response, the only one that protected her core secret, was immediate, silent, and entirely discreet intervention. I moved swiftly through the darkened, silent marble corridors, the polished, expensive stone chilling my bare feet. The heavy mahogany door to the private office wing was always secured, locked with a biometric scan. But tonight, perhaps due to the sudden violence of her collapse, it was merely ajar, held slightly open by a heavy decorative bronze sculpture. The scene inside the enormous, dimly lit office was a terrifying tableau of absolute physical collapse. The room was dominated by a large antique work desk, now partially obscured by its fallen owner. Ara lay motionless on the expensive, deep-pile carpet. She wasn't simply resting, she was prostrate. Her impeccably tailored dark suit, a uniform of power, was twisted and strained around her body. A heavy leather-bound financial ledger lay open beside her, clearly the source of the metallic clatter. She lay with one arm stretched out, her hand grasping futilely towards a sleek, expensive phone just inches out of her desperate reach. Her face, illuminated only by the cold, faint electronic glow of a large monitor left on, was a rigid mask of paralyzing, exquisite, unendurable pain, drawn tight and white. She was fully conscious, her eyes wide with fear and internal agony. But the pain was so total and acute that it had locked her entire body into agonizing stillness. "Alara," I whispered, rushing to her side, dropping immediately to my knees on the thick carpet. "God, what happened? Don't move. Do not try to move. Where exactly does it hurt?" She tried desperately to speak, her elegant, controlled lips struggling to form words. "Ethan, no, don't," she managed to gasp out the 2 short, agonizing words with immense effort. The plea instantly overrode her physical need for help, a desperate bid for the absolute protection of her image and her perfect facade. "It's too late for don't, Alara," I asserted, my voice automatically shifting into a tone of cold, decisive, necessary command, the tone of a crisis manager. "You are completely incapacitated and dangerously exposed. I am the only sober, able person here. Did you fall? Is it your back?" She finally managed a small, painful, rigid nod, her eyes wide with terror and profound humiliation. "Spasm, disc, absolute, can't move." The diagnosis was immediate, acute, debilitating back or disc pain, severe enough to cause total, agonizing paralysis. The slightest, most unintentional movement would be excruciating. She was trapped, completely exposed, and entirely dependent on the young man she was supposed to effortlessly command. "You are not safe or stable on this floor," I stated flatly, my gaze fixed on the danger of her position. "I'm not calling an ambulance unless you lose consciousness or the situation escalates. But you have no choice left. I need to move you now. I have to lift you gently, completely, and carry you out of this room." She closed her eyes against the necessary ultimate violation of her privacy, her perfect, controlled world dissolving into the unbearable heat of shame and the crushing weight of her physical collapse. The silent transfer of power, authority, and intimate physical custody was absolute and complete. The hushed, opulent private office, once the absolute zenith of Alara's professional power, had been violently transformed from her fortress of rigid control into the immediate site of her complete, humiliating physical collapse. Her silent, rigid nod was the binding contract. She surrendered her physical autonomy, her carefully managed dignity, and her immediate fate to me, Ethan, the unassuming nephew she always kept at an admiring yet distant remove. My immediate pressing task was the mechanical movement of her paralyzed body, an act requiring both immense physical strength and agonizing surgical care. "I need you to come with me, Alara," I instructed, my voice cutting through the thick layer of fear and silent agony in the room. "We will move minimally, slowly, and deliberately. I am going to slide my arms beneath you now. Do not actively resist or attempt to help me. Any tension will instantly cause more pain. You must become completely passive." The process was excruciatingly slow, clinically precise, and profoundly fraught with immense, necessary intimacy. I knelt low, carefully sliding my hands beneath the expensive tailored wool of her suit, one arm beneath the back of her knees, the other stabilizing the complex architecture of her upper back and neck. Her body was heavy, cold, and unnaturally rigid, resisting the very notion of move. I meant, the air was thick with the scent of her strong, elegant perfume and the visceral, metallic sharpness of pure, acute agony. The feel of her body was shocking, the intimate, unfamiliar, complex, dead weight of a woman who was always impeccably composed, now rendered inert and utterly vulnerable. My hands, large and young, were pressed directly against the expensive, smooth fabric of her tailored trousers and the silk lining of her jacket. This was the most intense, intimate physical contact I had ever had with my formidable godmother. And while entirely non-sexual and purely functional, it was deeply, disturbingly personal and utterly irreversible. As I slowly, minimally began the crucial lift, the pain instantly exploded in her spine. It wasn't a sound of ordinary suffering, but a sound of desperate, ingrained suppression, a sharp, strangled tearing, gasp of breath that was immediately, violently bitten off. Her jaw clenched so fiercely I could hear the faint click of her back teeth. Her deep, fierce pride was still fighting the animal necessity of the scream, even as her body failed her. I bore her weight fully, pulling her tightly and securely against my chest, ensuring her immobile body was held in a single, unwavering structural plane. She was pressed against me, her severe dark hair against my cheek, the warmth of her expensive suit against my shirt. She was completely reliant on my stability, my youth, and my strength to keep her in a single, agonizingly safe position. "Don't move, Alara," I whispered fiercely, my voice close to her ear, guiding her through the intense internal chaos of pain. "I have you. You are completely safe. We are going to your room now." The journey from the private office to her secluded master suite, a distance of perhaps 50 feet across expensive marble, felt like an unending, terrifying, perilous marathon. I moved slowly, meticulously navigating the sharp corners, the polished, treacherous marble floors, and the subtle, minute shifts in elevation. I was carrying the most powerful, controlling person I knew, and she was utterly, frighteningly powerless, a precious, fragile burden in my arms. The weight of her secret was heavier than the weight of her body. We finally reached the sanctuary of her master suite, a cool, minimalist, expansive space that perfectly mirrored her cold, controlled persona. I bypassed the high, elegant, antique bed, knowing that attempting to transfer her into it would involve impossible angles and would certainly cause severe, unnecessary pain. Instead, I carefully, painstakingly placed her onto the large, firm, supportive leather chaise lounge, a space better suited for stabilization and static management. "You are safe now," I managed, breathing hard from the massive physical effort, my own muscles trembling from the strain. "You are off the floor. Do not move. Not an inch, no resistance." She lay there flat on the firm leather, her expensive suit rumpled, her face white and slick with sweat and tears of pain. The silence returned, but this time it was a thick, suffocating silence of total exhaustion and survival. "The rules," she managed to whisper, her voice thin, raw, and raspy with pain and the residual effort of the lift. "No doctors, no outside help. This stays in this house, Ethan. Only you. I will not be exposed." "Your secret is safe, Alara," I confirmed, adopting the tone of the absolute cold professional who had taken charge. "But I need to establish immediate care. We need immediate sustained pain management, and we need to determine the probable extent of the injury. I'm going to get heat anti-inflammatories and call a discreet private nurse consultant, not a doctor, to advise on stabilization. You will not interfere and you will not resist." I moved through her private bathroom and adjoining dressing room, a profound, intimate, and necessary invasion of her most private space. I located medication, a strong industrial heating pad, and a large, soft robe, items that spoke of previous hidden struggles. I returned to find her attempting with pathetic, agonizing slowness to adjust her suit jacket, a final weak, desperate attempt to reclaim her shattered dignity and cover her physical failure. "Stop!" I ordered, my voice sharp and entirely without pity. "You are causing more damage and risking injury. That suit comes off now. It is restricting your spine and causing pressure. It is a necessary violation, and you will not resist this final command." Her eyes flared violently, filled with a last desperate fading flash of her usual command and fierce pride. But the sheer, unrelenting agony was the absolute dictator. She slowly, silently shook her head, a single clear tear of shame tracing a path through the sweat on her temple. "I need to cut it, or I need to unbutton it and slide it off," I stated, pulling the sharp utility scissors from the emergency kit I'd retrieved. "Which is the less painful option, Alara? Choose quickly." She closed her eyes, utterly defeated, the image of the razor-sharp shears terrifying her more than the intimacy. "Unbutton," she whispered, the single word choked with absolute humiliation. I knelt again, performing the intimate, agonizing task of undoing the small, delicate buttons of her expensive suit jacket and the crisp silk blouse beneath. My young, large fingers were inches from her skin, carrying out a task normally reserved only for a lover or a medical professional. The air was charged with her profound physical shame and my detached, clinical, necessary authority. The barrier between godmother and godson, icon and assistant, was completely, irrevocably shattered by the silk and the simple, necessary buttons. The master suite, moments ago the scene of a profound, painful violation, settled into a strained, focused silence. I had successfully navigated the removal of the rigid suit, replacing the severe corporate armor with the soft, yielding fabric of a massive silk robe I found hanging in her closet, a final necessary intrusion into her most private domain. She lay on the chaise lounge, no longer visually imposing, but still radiating a wounded, absolute pride. My focus shifted from crisis management to sustained care. I called my contact, a private nurse consultant I knew who specialized in discreet, high-end home care, giving a carefully sanitized, professionalized summary of the situation. Severe acute muscle spasm in the lumbar region, needs conservative management at home, patient is high-profile, non-compliant, requires absolute discretion. The nurse's advice was swift, high-dosage anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxers, sustained deep heat, and total immediate immobilization. My authority was instantly legitimized by a third-party medical opinion. I administered the medication, a bitter pill that represented the pharmacological surrender of her control. I had to lift her head carefully, supporting her neck, guiding the water to her lips. It was a simple action, yet deeply intimate, marking me as the gatekeeper of her physical comfort. The effect of the medications was slow but visible. The rigid tension in her jaw and the cold sheen of sweat on her forehead slowly eased. The transformation from an effigy of agonizing paralysis to a merely suffering woman was palpable, but the mental strain, the shame of her dependency, was intensifying as her physical pain receded. "You will not be answering your phone, Alara," I stated, placing her phone on a high shelf out of reach. "You are completely off-grid. I will handle all external communications. If you must be contacted, you will use me as an intermediary. Your complete physical and professional silence is non-negotiable." She tried to object, her voice a low, rough protest. "Ethan, my board meeting." "Cancelled," I interrupted without a hint of apology. "I have already sent a cryptic, professional email to your senior assistant, citing an acute, highly confidential family matter, demanding your immediate full attention. It implies importance, not weakness. I am your crisis manager now. You will focus only on healing." The power shift was complete and documented I had not just physically controlled her body, I had taken administrative control of her empire. The next hour was dedicated to deep heat. I placed the heating pad carefully beneath her, a task that required her to endure several minutes of agonizing, small, supported movements as I shifted her weight. Her repressed groans of pain were the only sound muffled against the soft leather. "I am sorry," I whispered, the first moment of human empathy breaking through my clinical demeanor. "Don't be," she gasped, her eyes tightly shut. This is the price of keeping my secret. I accept it, but Ethan, you must understand the gravity of what you are seeing. If anyone sees me like this or knows the extent of this failure, my position is untenable. This is a weapon you hold now." The admission was raw and chilling. She was acknowledging the absolute, dangerous power I possessed. "I understand the leverage, Alara," I replied, my voice steady, "but I have no interest in using it, only in securing your health and our mutual privacy. Now, the second phase of care begins hygiene. You have been immobile for hours. I need to clean the sweat and apply an antiseptic rub to prevent bed sores. I will need access to your lower back and legs." The final absolute boundary was presented. She was wearing only the silk robe, and the care required full physical manipulation of her body, a duty normally reserved for the most intimate of relationships. Her entire body tensed again, not from pain, but from profound, final shame. "No," she whispered, her voice shaking, a raw plea. "Please, Ethan, just the edges. I can't." "You are my patient, Alara," I stated, my tone firm but respectful of her humiliation. "This is not optional care. It is necessary prevention. The robe is coming off, and I am turning you onto your side. You have total control over the external narrative. But in this room, you have zero control over the necessities of your recovery. Accept this now, or I will call the medical team and end this secret." The threat was real, precise, and utterly final. She slowly released a long, shuddering breath, the breath of a defeated warrior. She nodded, her face buried in the chaise lounge, unable to look at the young man who was about to attend to her most basic exposed needs. The power shift was complete, sealed by a warm towel, muscle relaxers, and the crushing weight of her public image. The atmosphere in the master suite was thick with the scent of pain bombs and the strained electricity of two lives violently rearranged. Alara had finally submitted to the necessary physical care, a surrender more profound than any defeat she had ever faced in the corporate arena. She lay passively as I, Ethan, performed the intimate, painstaking task of hygiene and preventative care. "I need you to rotate onto your side now, Alara," I instructed, my voice maintaining its clinical, unwavering neutrality. "I will support your shoulder and hip. We will move slowly, focusing on keeping the spine rigidly straight." The effort was agonizing, but the medication had dulled the sharpness of the spasm. The rotation was slow, grinding, and necessary. As the silk robe was shifted away, her entire body was exposed to my view and my hands, a profound, irreversible violation of her pride. The skin of her back and legs was pale, cool, and soft, a canvas of vulnerability previously hidden beneath layers of sharp tailoring and professional composure. My hands, large and young, moved with forced precision over her body, applying the warm, medicated rub. I was acutely aware of the weight and texture of her mature form, a complexity far removed from the simple image of the formidable lawyer. This was an act of pure, essential human maintenance, yet its intimacy was undeniable. I was not touching her as a relative or a man, but as a silent, detached administrator of her physical reality. "I am checking for pressure points now," I informed her, my voice low. "The danger is immobility. You need to be repositioned slightly every few hours. I will handle the night routine." Her humiliation reached its peak when she finally had to confront the necessity of basic, unattended bodily functions. She was trapped, completely immobilized by her pain, and entirely reliant on my proximity. "Ethan," she choked out, her voice barely a whisper, filled with absolute raw defeat. "I need the commode. I cannot move. I can't call a nurse. No one can see me." "Understood," I responded without a trace of judgment or pity. "I will manage it. I am your attendant. You are under my full custody. There is nothing left to be ashamed of here. Focus on the mechanics." The next hour was spent performing the most basic, necessary, and boundary-shattering tasks of human care. I was her anchor, her muscle, her unblinking witness. Each task performed cemented the destruction of the old relationship and the construction of the new. Her shame was absolute, but her dependence was more absolute still. As the pre-dawn light began to filter through the massive windows, I had stabilized her fully. She was comfortable, medicated, and completely immobilized. I sat in a severe leather chair across the room watching her. She finally broke the tense silence, her voice exhausted but clear. The damage is done, Ethan. You have seen everything. You have touched everything. You have the access codes to my external life. What is your demand? What is the price of your silence? The price is simple, Alara, I stated, rising to stand over her, emphasizing the finality of my authority. It is not money or influence. It is the end of the fiction, the absolute unfeigned truth about your life, your stress, and your illness when I ask for it. No more facades for me. You will treat me as an intelligent equal and a partner in this secret. I reached over and gently took her hand, the powerful hand that usually signed multi-million-dollar contracts, and pressed my thumb firmly against her pulse point. And you will promise me, I finished, my gaze locked onto hers, that you will prioritize your body and your healing above your work. If you try to move, if you try to work, or if you attempt to leave this custody without my direct permission, I will call your business partner and expose the full truth of your paralysis and your recklessness. Your body is my jurisdiction now. She held my gaze for a long moment, the fear replaced by a strange, intense mixture of shame and respect. She slowly, deliberately nodded her head in acceptance. The covenant is sealed, Ethan, she whispered. I am your patient. My secrets are yours. Now secure the room and never leave me alone until I can stand again. I placed the commode out of sight, rearranged the heat pad, and then, pulling a soft blanket over her, I took my seat in the leather chair. The formidable lawyer was finally at rest, completely dependent on her young nephew. The great, impenetrable fortress was quiet, and I was the unexpected silent custodian of its greatest secret.